date invited me to a fake barbecue and then wouldn't let me leave. House had a soundproof music studio in the basement. This took place a while ago, 2015-ish, but I'll probably never forget it. I, around 21 at the time, female, was still fairly new in my city. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, wasn't in the best place mentally, and didn't know a lot of people in town besides my ex and his friends. I was on a dating/hookup app looking for people to hang out casually with, maybe find a FLDB or something. I had matched with a 25-year-old guy, Simon. We talked sporadically in the app for a few days. He explained he was in a band and living in a house with his bandmates. He sent me their music. It was just audio on YouTube with a heavily edited still image of 4 or 5 guys playing rock instruments. One of them looked like him. The music was an interesting combination of styles, and not really for me, but whatever. He seemed like a nice enough guy. He stopped replying for a few days, and I figured that was that. Moved on. Then one day I was at work and got a message from him saying sorry he'd been so busy and inviting me to a barbecue with his friends and bandmates in their yard. He had explained that their band manager was providing them the house to live in. Based on the lack of views on the YouTube video and the fact I only saw one photo of him playing in the band, I figured he was probably exaggerating the band manager thing. I thought it was more likely something along the lines of a bar manager friend giving them a discount on rent in exchange for being a house band at their bar or something, and didn't think much of it beyond that. Normally, I would have just said no to going to a barbecue alone at the home of someone I really didn't know. But I was really bored and figured I might be able to overcome some social anxiety and maybe even make some female friends there, since he made it sound like a pretty big party. I put the neighborhood he gave me into maps, and it was a suburban area with lots of families as far as I knew. I figured being in a yard on such a nice summer day wouldn't be overly risky because lots of neighbors would be outside. Plus, it was just a few train stops away from my workplace, and I was off in a few hours. I did tell him I wasn't overly comfortable with the idea since I didn't know him well, but I would stop by for a bit if I didn't need to go inside the house at all. He said that was totally fine, which made me feel a lot better. I even made sure to not drink anything for the rest of my shift, so I wouldn't be risking needing to go inside to use the bathroom. I was anxious about just showing up to a BBQ with people I didn't know at all, as he implied that the event was already underway. Plus, I would have had a hard time finding a specific address from the backyard side, so I asked Simon if he could meet me at the train station, since he said it was a quick walk anyway. He agreed to do that, and I let him know when I was leaving work and what time maps said the train would get to his station. I sent Simon a message to tell him that I had arrived at the train station around 5:30 after I looked around and couldn't find him. He told me he was running behind and to just start walking toward the neighborhood. I was about halfway across the massive train station parking lot when I saw him slowly wandering toward me. I recognized his clothes, wearing bell-bottoms when they were not common, especially for men, and long hair from far away, but up close his face looked pretty different from his photos. It might have been some heavy-duty editing, I don't even know. But he kinda looked like a different guy, older looking than the 25-year-old guy in the photos by 5 to 10 years. Maybe used photos of his brother or something. I don't even know, it was before AI. This was the first real red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he's just self-conscious. Maybe he smokes a lot and doesn't wear sunscreen and hasn't taken pictures in a while. All of his pictures looked candid, so I figured he wasn't much of a selfie guy. And besides, I'm mostly here to make friends anyway, so I shouldn't judge his appearance so harshly. He was also clearly already drunk, but a lot of my ex's friends were heavy drinkers, so that didn't seem strange. He's hosting a BBQ after all. The second red flag came shortly after when we arrived at the front door. I reminded him that I wasn't comfortable going inside the house, but he assured me we would just have to walk through to get to the backyard. Okay, fine. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where you could just walk around the house to get to the backyard. We would have had to backtrack to the main road to go down the alley directly to the backyard. I figured he just forgot what I said about not wanting to go inside and didn't want to cause a bunch of trouble, so I went with it. We got in the house and he immediately closed the door and locked the deadbolt and knob behind me. I didn't think that was too weird since nobody was hanging out inside, and a lot of people are just in the habit of locking the door when they come in, but it did still give me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. Then Simon told me he'd really like to give me a tour of the house. I politely declined and reminded him that Elle was just there for the BBQ. He said that he and his bandmates had worked really hard to get the house, and he was really proud of it. At that point, I was getting really skeptical because usually when guys would tell me things that seemed a bit far-fetched, they'd let the truth slip by the time they got me to their house. But still, I convinced myself that I was being unreasonable. I was already in the stupid house anyway. He insisted it'd be quick. Not the wisest choice, I know. But I was pretty good at explaining away red flags. So at this point, Simon still mostly had a dopey stoner art guy kind of vibe, as far as I was concerned. He really didn't seem like a threat, just an insecure oddball who sucks at communicating and fibs a bit. Not unlike my ex, who was definitely emotionally and verbally abusive, but it never escalated past that. I figured at worst he'd get handsy and I'd get called a prude for not sleeping with him. I didn't have a lot of self-worth at the time, obviously, so I went with it. The tour started pretty uneventfully. Other than that, the decor in the common areas was obviously chosen by a middle-aged Martha Stewart enthusiast, and not a bunch of guys in a band or their fake band manager. I didn't know if this should make me feel better or worse. On one hand, he was clearly lying, but on the other, it made me think it was probably just someone's mom's house, and she was out of town, and he didn't want to tell me he lived at a friend's parents' home and didn't actually have a paying job. Again, total red flag, but I could rationalize it at the time. The bedroom doors were all closed. Bathroom was unremarkable. He then showed me the kitchen, and I finally saw through the window that there was nobody in the backyard. There weren't even BBQ supplies around. No burgers thawing on the counter. No cocktail supplies lying around. Nothing. I asked him where everyone was and why he lied about the BBQ, and he told me that his bandmates were on tour still. They were just running behind due to van trouble, but they should be back any minute so we could start the party. I asked him why he wasn't on tour with them if he's in the band. I don't even remember what his answer was to that because it didn't make any sense. At this point, I'm out of mental gymnastics to convince myself that this guy isn't just completely full of shit, and I'm really freaked out. Took me long enough. I'm smarter now, don't worry. I started trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation. I hoped that once he was done with the tour, we could go outside, even just for a minute, and I'd just leave. I'd been in some sketchy situations in the past, but luckily nothing so bad that they tried very hard to physically stop me when I walked away in a semi-public place. I just wasn't comfortable doing it inside the house. I knew this guy was full of shit, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. I instinctively pretended to believe his bullshit. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks because I had to work in the morning. He said okay and cracked one for himself. Then he wanted to take the tour downstairs. I could see from the top of the stairs that the basement was the dark and creepy kind with really small windows, so I refused. I asked if we could go back outside. He said after the tour. I tried to argue about going into the basement, told him I have a spider phobia, don't like basements, etc. All lies, but anything that wouldn't let him realize that he was what I was afraid of. He started to get agitated about my reluctance, so I figured it would be better to just let him show me the damn basement, and then hopefully we could go outside because I really didn't know what else to do. The basement was fairly unremarkable. Couch, TV, elliptical. Until I noticed something that gave me chills. The house was probably built in the 1990s or late 80s at the absolute earliest. But I saw a door that looked just like the heavy foam-lined door to the cold storage room in my grandma's house. the kind that only opens from the outside. It was just a smaller version of the big metal doors on commercial walk-in fridges. It looked really out of place in this house. I would absolutely not go anywhere near that door. He opened it and told me it was their soundproof music studio. I looked inside from a few meters away. It did indeed look soundproof. It was about the size of a bedroom, and I could see a few guitars and amps in it. Mattress toppers on the walls. No drum kit or recording equipment that I could see. He insisted I go inside to get a better look. He was standing outside the door, motioning for me to go inside. Holy shit, the alarm bells are really going off now. At this point, I realized I could totally die here if I'm not careful, and I turned around to run up the stairs. He closed the door and followed me, asking what's wrong, acting like I'm being all unreasonable for not wanting to see his soundproof music studio. So I'm realizing that this is a way sketchier situation than any of my ex's bullshit, and I'm freaked right out. At that point, my main objective was getting out of the house. The front and back doors were both closed and locked, so if I tried to run, he'd be able to get to me before I could get the locks open. The bathroom did not have a window. The house had a convoluted floor plan that I wasn't familiar with, and he was much bigger than I am. He was the tall, lanky type who can run fast even if they're out of shape and smoke a pack a day. I pretended that I was okay with hanging out with him in the hopes that he'd chill out a bit. We made small talk for a few minutes. He cracked another beer, and thankfully he calmed down. I desperately mentioned yet again that it was beautiful outside and suggested we go sit in the yard while we wait. He said no and started to get agitated that I wanted to leave already. I told him that I could stay, but I'd just really like to smoke a cigarette. He told me that we could smoke cigarettes inside and pointed to a cereal bowl full of cigarette butts. God damn it. We sat down at the table and lit some cigarettes. As he was smoking, he started rolling a joint, which he promptly lit as soon as his cig was done. He offered me some, and I said no thanks. He insisted, so I took the smallest puff I could. I'm a pretty seasoned weed smoker, but I pretended to cough excessively and told him I'm a novice, so that's more than enough for me. For a liar himself, he thankfully wasn't very good at picking up on the lies of others. After we smoked, he asked if I'd like to watch a movie until his bandmates get back. I told him that I was really looking forward to spending the day outside and suggested we go for a walk or visit the park. Ideas he did not like or appreciate. At this point, I was trying to keep as much distance as possible between us, but he stayed close enough to me that I could smell the beer on his breath. He grabbed me by the waist, and I backed away and asked about the BBQ food to try and change the subject and make him think I still believed what he was telling me. He started to get angry again and sternly reiterated that his bandmates should be home any minute, and my anxiety was absolutely through the roof. I tried to calm him down again with generic small talk. Now, I don't know how I got so lucky, but the next thing that happened might have saved me. Simon went to the fridge to get another beer and pulled out an empty box. At this point, he's getting even more pissed off than before, so I went out on a limb and suggested we go get some more beer for the party, because I was out of ideas. I was terrified that it would enrage him even more to suggest, once again, that we leave the house, but I had to try. Thankfully, though, his eyes lit up with the possibility that I could actually be down to drink with him, and he agreed. As we were walking to the liquor store, I still didn't really have a plan because I was no longer comfortable just walking away from this fucking menace in this weirdly desolate suburb. But I was extremely relieved to be out of that house. I walked with him to the liquor store, and when we got there, told him I didn't need to go inside if he was just gonna go grab some beer. He insisted that I had to go inside. At that point, I was so stressed and frazzled, I just went with him and hoped that a good opportunity to leave would arise. When we got inside the liquor store, he asked what kind of beer I wanted. I reminded him that I had to work tomorrow and didn't want to drink much. He demanded to know what kind of beer I wanted, so I just named the first one that came to mind. We went to pay. The cashier was kind of an asshole, so I didn't ask for help. I probably should have, but I panicked and didn't. I hoped there might be somebody in the parking lot who might help me if I made a scene. But there was nobody. I really regretted not asking the liquor store guy for help, but also remembered the times my ex told people I was crazy, so they wouldn't take me seriously. Liquor store guy definitely seemed like he would have fell for that, so probably for the best I didn't expect him to help me. I had one last idea before I took my chances just trying to run and/or scream. There was a drugstore across from the liquor store. I told Simon I had to go buy a toothbrush or some shit that vaguely implied I might stay over. He eagerly agreed to this but tried to follow me into the store. I told him that you're not allowed to bring beer into a drugstore. I don't know if that's even true, I really doubt it's any kind of law, but luckily this drunk douchebag believed it and agreed to wait outside. Now my naive ass thought maybe I could just wander around in this drugstore for long enough, and he would either get the hint, or get sketched out, or bored and leave. But no, I must have wandered around the store for at least half an hour, and this jackass is still just standing there staring in the window. This creep didn't even have his phone out. Every time I checked if he was still there, he was just staring through the window looking for me. I didn't feel like I had anybody I could call in the city to come help me. The cops here don't usually take things like this very seriously, and the store workers looked like they were mostly high school students, and I didn't want to drag them into this, so I really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. After being in there for so long, I was surprised he didn't come in to see what was taking me so long. I thought maybe I could lose him in the aisles and sneak out of the store if he did come in. But nope. I ended up hovering around the tills and waited until a big group of friendly-looking people were paying. I followed them out of the store and immediately told Simon to leave me alone and go home. I said it firmly and loudly enough to imply that I would make a scene if need be. Simon looked at the people getting in their car, who were now pausing and looking at us because I had nearly yelled at him, and then he just turned around and left. It was bizarrely anticlimactic, which I was very thankful for. I ran to the train station, which thankfully was in a different direction than his house from the store, and I never heard from him again. When I got home, his app profile had either blocked me or been deleted. Years later, after I stopped compartmentalizing the whole thing, I wish I would have reported him or something. It bothers me to wonder if he tried it again with someone else, but made sure the fridge was stocked first. But at the time, I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. I was embarrassed of my choices, and I just wanted to move on from the whole thing. Plus, all I really had was a likely fake first name and a general idea of where the house was, which probably wasn't even his. I'll probably never know any more than I do now, and maybe that's for the best. Anyway, Simon. My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 2 decades later, I realized what he actually saw. I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us 3 at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are window doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kinda leans into a small hill. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway. I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try to scare me, or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it. but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise, because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. Gun owner family in a quiet rural WV neighborhood, etc. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white male, wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair. Something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago, in my mid-20s, that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. What was she planning to do to me? One time I went to the bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I haven't been to much bars up to that point. My friend was drinking on the way to the bar, so he was already pretty drunk when we got there. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came and talked to me and my friend. She said her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really bright red hair. I assumed she dyed it. It was pretty but unnatural. Anyways, this girl was flirting with me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already very drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was drunk already too, since it seemed to be working for my friend. I didn't know if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her we didn't have much money. She offered to buy us drinks. She kept buying us drinks, and I started to get confused as to who she liked between me and my friend. My friend went to the bathroom. Before he came back, he was kicked out by the bouncers. He was too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to go home with her. He was so out of it he could barely answer her. I told her he was too drunk and that I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him to wake up hungover in some random house with no car and no idea what happened. Candace kept pushing it, saying that she would take care of him, but I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than him. He was my responsibility. I told her the only way he was going anywhere was if I tagged along. I assumed she thought that I was jealous or cock-blocking, but my friend could barely stand and lost interest in Candace already. At that point, she immediately started flirting with me and offered to get my friend a taxi to drive him home and said we could go to her place alone. At this point, I had a few drinks and I was pretty buzzed, so I agreed. We took my friend to the taxi and walked to her car. I slightly stumbled on the way to her car. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said, smiling as she held onto my arm. "Yeah," I said. I don't know why, but I just felt slightly shy and anxious. Everything was just happening too easy for me, so I felt uneasy. We got in her car. We drove down the street. "Want to stop at the liquor store and get some more to drink? I'll buy it, so don't worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want to drink any more than I already did. I was already buzzed and wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I make myself look stupid when I'm drunk, so I didn't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already did earlier, with telling her my friend was too drunk. I told her I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to get me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to chase it. She went in the store and came out with a lot more than just a pint. I assume she wanted to drink more also, and that's why she got a fifth instead of a pint. On the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she took tiny sips. I tried to take tiny sips, but she kept passing me the bottle and telling me to drink. I somehow managed to drink all of my apple juice and pretend to drink the bottle by spitting the liquor in the apple juice bottle. I tossed the apple juice bottle full of liquor out the window before she saw it. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I was. She actually believed I was sloppy drunk when I was simply buzzed. I took a couple more sips of liquor and finished the bottle. Throughout the car ride, I called her the wrong name a couple of times to get a reaction out of her. She didn't react to it. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, I thought she lied to me about her name initially. We drove up to her house. I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked. We walked in her house. She closed her front door and then locked it. I thought that was strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking in on us. I told her that I had to use the bathroom. I walked into her bathroom, locked the door, and looked in the mirror. I just felt strange. I felt like something was off. I felt myself becoming more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make noise and made myself puke up the liquor I drank. I flushed and went to the sink and started drinking the tap water out of my hands to sober up. I just didn't want to be drunk, but I still wanted to hook up with Candace, so I wanted to pretend to be drunk. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone. "He's drunk as hell. He can barely stand up. You do it." Who was she talking to? And do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head, that strange, very bright red hair go into another room. I didn't see her face or anything. I just saw her kind of walk fast into the room. The living room was pretty dark. "Hey, where you going?" I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. "Let's go in my room," she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. That's when I realized. It was another girl with the same wig on. It was a wig the whole time. She had changed it with the girl from earlier for whatever reason. My heart felt like it stopped. But I tried to look like I had no idea it was a different girl. I kind of smiled at her and told her I just needed to use the bathroom one more time, and told her sorry I was so drunk. She said, "It's fine, just hurry up in there." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I heard her whisper something to someone again. This time I think I heard a male voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on listening to exactly what she said. Something sketchy was going on and I had to get out of that house. I opened the bathroom window and jumped straight out of it and ran faster than I have ever ran in my life. I didn't look behind myself or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped the fence, ran through someone else's yard, hit a road, and ran toward the main road. I kept running down the main road until I saw a 24-hour convenience store. I ran into the store and stood straight at the front of the store in front of the camera. I called a taxi and went home. I tried to think what happened that night. What was she or they planning that night? Why did she tell me a fake name? Why was she trying to get my friend and I so drunk? I thought maybe a robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi cab. And mostly, why did she wear a wig that she gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room they tried to lure me into? Update. The next day after this incident, I went back to the house with a couple of friends to see just what was going on. Nobody was there. No cars, no people, nothing. Just an empty house. I ended up finding out that the house was a summer rental, and whoever those people were, they broke into that house and used it for